Hey everybody, it's Leo from Leero Gaming, and today I'm really stoked to bring to you my very first full in-depth build guide for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Today I'm going to be showing to you my main class, my main character, my Graveborn Deadshot Ultimate Summoner. This build is absolutely insane. You can summon upwards of 15 plus companions. It also fully leverages the power of spell power and does a ton of damage. It's super tanky, it's super versatile. It basically has no weakness, to the point that I confidently and unapologetically say that I feel like this may very well be the best build in the game. Now, I know just saying that is going to trigger some people, and that's fine. I'd love to have a discussion with you in the description below. But first, I would recommend that you watch this video, as I'll explain exactly why I feel this build is that darn good and has that much potential. Now in this video, you're going to find everything you need to know in order to build this character for yourself. So we're going to be talking about hero points and archetype choices at the beginning. We're going to be talking about skills, and I will identify and explain all the key synergies that make this work. We're going to be talking about gear. I'm going to be showing the gear I currently have. I'm also going to show you some alternative options that you may pick up. We're also going to talk a little bit about Chaos Chamber curses, what curses I prefer and recommend that people avoid, and also overall gameplay strategies of how to get the most out of this build. Now, for those that want to see it, I've also included something special. At the end of the video, I'm going to share with you my very first one-shot of a Chaos 20 run. So it wasn't perfect. There was actually a technical glitch that you'll probably see, but I kind of kept that in there. It's kind of hard not to have it without some editing that would look a little wonky. So this was a one-shot clear. In fact, with this character, I one-shot pretty much across the board without any major issues. So if you want to see that in action, you're curious how it plays, you're going to be able to find that as well. Now, all these sections, you're going to be able to navigate easily. You're going to find timestamps below. So feel free to utilize those how you may see fit. With that being said, if you end up enjoying this content and find this guide helpful, do drop a like. Again, I greatly appreciate the comments. I love reading your comments and feedbacks. Love interacting with you. And then if you like looter shooters in general, RPGs, and you like my style, then why not subscribe? So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in, guys, and take a look at everything you need to know to build your very own Graveborn Deadshot Ultimate Summoner. All right, we're going to start by talking about the archetype choice, and I am right now at a character creation screen because I actually messed this up big time. So one of the big things to note about this build is we're going to be getting ambidextrous, which basically turns your action skill into a second spell. Now, I had erroneously thought that that action skill, even though it had a spell in it, it still acted as an action skill kind of ability. And so I was under the impression that we needed to have skill cooldown in addition to spell cooldown. So I just thought automatically, hey, I should probably get Recovering Inventory Hoarder. And that would be really brilliant. Well, unfortunately, this is not the case. Attunement is absolutely useless for this build. So this is not a very good option. Now, unfortunately, if you kind of look at all these other options, for example, Failed Monk, we like the intelligence, but we hate losing strength and dexterity. Rogue Alchemist isn't great either here because we do want crit, etc. So the interesting thing here, of all these choices, Village Idiot, interestingly enough, seemed the most useful. So even though we are going to be going and maxing out intelligence first because we want to get spell cooldown high, the fact is everything else is at 0, which is fine. We eventually will put some points into dexterity. You may or may not choose to put some into strength. And we're also going to be pumping constitution for this build as well, for the survivability and some of the synergies. So interestingly enough, this super smart summoner is best going as a Village Idiot. All right, so now that you have your archetype, let's go ahead and take a look at hero stats. So remember, I messed up on this. I royally messed up on this. So my ratios are a little off. I have this wasted attunement. So what I recommend you do is, again, you're going to have, I believe it's going to be 18 strength baseline. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start by pumping your intelligence as high as you can. Get the spell cooldown rate as high as you can. Once that is done, I actually recommend maxing out Constitution. It should give you roughly, maybe actually less than that, because I got points from the mythic ranks. I'm not sure if they're counted here or not. But get your Constitution as high as you can as well. That extra max hit points and ward is going to help with your survival a ton, based on everything we're about to discuss in the skill section. So when I talk about tankiness, this will all make sense. And then you're going to have some points left over still, and you can go ahead and pump dexterity. All right, now I'm going to start the discussion of the skills and skill synergies by addressing my probably very polarizing statement at the beginning of this video that I believe this is the best overall build in Wonderlands. And that's because I believe in order for a build to be the best in the game, it has to meet very specific criteria. Number one, I believe it needs to be extremely powerful. It has to have a quick clear speed, lots of damage. It should also be quite tanky. And it should have no glaring weaknesses. And then finally, the most subjective element of this is that it should be fun. If a build has most of these, but not all of them, it's probably quite good. It could be super OP, but a very frustrating gameplay style, and some people may hate that. Or maybe it's really powerful, but it's a total glass cannon. And so a lot of people may suck at the build and really struggle with it. So by that, I feel like it would get disqualified from being the best overall build in the game. So I'll address each of these areas as we look at the synergies and the skills here. And by the end, hopefully you'll see why I believe this build is this darn good. Now, of course, I am not comparing it to any builds that are using glitches and exploits. Those are disqualified in my opinion. This uses no glitches, no exploits. It's using natural synergies and normal gear in their normal positions. So where does the DPS come from? Well, first and foremost, Faithful Thrall is huge. And you'll notice I actually have 6 out of 3 of this. This is going to be a big part of the build, and we'll discuss this in the gear. But basically, as you can see here, once you get 6 out of 3, you get 18% extra damage per companion you have. And we're going to discuss in the gear section what counts as a companion. But just note that this build will allow you to get anywhere between 10 to 15, even theoretically, potentially 16 companions. Currently, you're not going to you're rarely going to get that high, because by the time you get close to that, your DPS is going to be so through the roof, everything's going to just start dying and getting one shot, as you'll see in the video. Very, very important, but you can. And so, for example, if you were to get 15 companions, that's going to be 270% damage. Now, damage dealt in this game impacts everything. It applies to your guns, to your melee, to your spells, to your companion damage, everything. It is the ultimate form of damage. And then, of course, you have individual damages that are big. Spell power is a big one, as spell power is going to impact some, not all, but some of your companions, namely the ones that you're going to summon. It's through your spells. And also those spells sometimes have secondary effects that tie into summoning those pets, and those will do more damage as well. So spell power is really, really big. Bigger part of that is Ascension. It's a kill skill, and you'll notice it can stack up to 10 times, and for every stack you get at 3 out of 3, 6% spell damage in addition to 6% maximum health. And so at 10 stacks, this is 60% spell damage. Earlier in the game, before you get gear that helps you max out Faithful Thrall and Dark Hydra, you may just by accident get gear that had Ascension +3, and I had that for a while. That was quite powerful as well. That gives you 120% spell damage. Now, why is this so good? This is so good because it's not only going to help you in those ways I just explained, but since we're going Spellweaver, we take advantage of something called Magic Bullet. And it basically has a conversion of your spell damage to gun damage. So 45% of all of your spell power is going to be converted to gun damage. And when you're talking about getting, the numbers that we see here, 60 to 120%, depending on what body armor you're wearing, that's a significant number, and it's going to help your overall performance. In addition to that, you're going to have the whole spell weaving mechanic here. And what's nice about this is every time you reload or cast a spell, you are going to get a stack of spell weaving, and for each stack you get 10% spell damage. So initially you're going to be able to stack this to 5 almost immediately, and then eventually towards the end you're going to be able to get 8, so 80% spell power, which again is going to impact those spells, the summons that you summon through those spells as well. And it's also going to increase your gun damage as well. It also helps with all the spell damage that you have a nice natural buff to spell crit hit chance. So here as part of the build, you're going to get 60% spell crit hit chance. And then because we will be putting some points in the hero system into spell critical hit chance, that's going to be important as well. Now, to assist those factors, there's going to be 2 more things that play a big role in this combination. Number 1 is the ability to get a consistent 45% spell cooldown rate built in. So you're going to have a 25% spell cooldown rate from it's going to refresh. It's going to be active for 12 seconds every single time you kill something. So this is going to be up pretty much permanently. And you're also going to get a passive font of mana, which is going to give you another 20%. So you can count on this pretty much all the time. This is going to, again, go a long way to make sure that you can cast both of your spells almost constantly. And then the other big element here is the fact that you're going to have a lot of kill skills, and you have a unique advantage that nobody else has when it comes to proccing your kill skills. This will not only make the class super powerful in general, but also a little bit more viable when it comes to co-op gameplay as well, because you're going to have Morhaine's Blessing. So casting a spell automatically activates all of the Fate Maker's kill skills. This is huge. Again, you're going to have 2 spells that you're going to be able to basically cast back to back. So that's 2 guaranteed kill skills every single time you cast those, in addition to your kills off. And if you take a look at what we have when it comes to kill skills, number 1, obviously 25% spell cooldown rate. You're also going to have Harvest, so every time you kill something, your companions deal bonus dark magic damage for duration. So these are all companions. And it's important to know, when you see bonus dark magic damage, this means that it is not required that the companion had previously been doing some dark magic damage. If it said, if it did an extra 20% dark magic damage, that would be different. Because it says bonus, it's just extra damage. So this has 2 stacks. So this is going to give them an extra 18% damage. That is dark magic damage. Why this is important is because this is life tap. So they're going to heal themselves. All of your companions will have at least some form of sustainability, so that they don't get killed when you're out there nearly as much. So some monsters like the Dark Hydras you summon here and your Demi-Lich Companion already do dark magic damage. All the other Hydras that may be of different elements will also have at least some of that dark magic damage and some self-healing because of it. Now, last but not least, let's not forget your Demi-Lich Companion. He is actually going to be doing really good damage as well, because for the first time now in Borderlands series, anytime you do damage increases to yourself, it will automatically apply to your Graveborn as well, your Demi-Lich Companion rather. So this is important because there are definitely companion buffs to damage. But as you see by the description here, you're going to be able to take advantage of that and everything else. So again, potentially that 270% damage bonus that you're going to be getting for yourself is also going to come to your Demi-Lich Companion. And then he's going to do this Hellish Blast that's quite potent every time you cast a spell. And you're going to be casting 2 spells again every 6 or 7 to 10 seconds after cooldowns. Maybe some of those spells will take a little longer, but worst case scenario, every 10 seconds or so, you should be able to cycle through 2 of these procs. And this will definitely, this is nothing to sneeze at. It's going to add up over the run here. Now let's go ahead and move on to criteria number 2, which is tankiness. So this build is definitely not squishy, even though you would think that, casters are normally kind of squishy. So the very first thing is going to be just the fact that you have an almost always on built-in mitigation. So you're going to put 1 point into Dread Covenant, and you're going to basically be getting 35% damage redirection. Now there is a limitation to it, but it's one of those things that it's going to kind of help you stay out of trouble whenever there's big bursts of damage that come your way. Yes, it's possible that your companion might die, but don't forget, eventually you're going to have a respawn rate plus 90%, so he's rarely going to be dead for long. So that's nice. The second thing that's going to help you is every time you cast a spell, you're going to proc health regeneration of 15% per second for 2 seconds. So that's every time you cast a spell, over 2 seconds, you heal 30% of your max health. Now, what's key here is that you have 2 spells again, so you can cast these back to back and heal 60% of your health. Now, your total health is also going to increase through Ascension. So remember, Ascension here increases your spell damage, but also your maximum health. So even if you just go 3 out of 3, that's an extra 60% maximal health. And so these percentages of healing are going to become more and more significant. In addition to that, for both survival and DPS, you have Lord of Edges. So as your health drops, you're going to get an additional up to 25% damage reduction, as well as an additional 25% damage. And so that's, again, just kind of an icing on the cake, kind of a reward for surviving being on the edge. You don't have to think about it, you don't have to cast it, but it's there, and we don't want to underrate it. And then we get to the magic that is our shielding. So there are going to be 2 different points here, Mage Armor and Glass Cannon. And these 2 are going to synergize really nice. So Mage Armor makes it that every time you gain a stack of Spell Weaving, you're going to get 10% of your shielding, your ward back. So let's remember that here. But then Glass Cannon makes it so you can't regenerate ward, which is shielding again, which sounds like it sucks, but in turn we get 30% damage, spell damage, which is significant. Why do we not worry about it? Well, we don't worry about it because you are going to be proccing Spell Weaving constantly. As a reminder, in order to proc Spell Weaving, all you have to do is cast a spell or reload. Now, in this build, in this gameplay, you are going to be reloading every 1 to 1.3 seconds. Now, that may seem kind of like a pain in the butt, but trust me, it's not. It is going to help you max out your DPS and also make it so that basically every 10 seconds or so, roughly, if you were to be in the middle of combat where you're constantly shooting and reloading and casting spells, you should be able to get back about 60 to 70% of your shield, max shielding. And this is in combat. Don't forget, normally shielding only regens when you're out of combat. And this allows you to also basically pick up some of those shields that have huge max shielding, but their downside is normally that it takes a really long time for the recharge rate to kick in. But we don't care about recharge rate. We don't care about recharge delay. All we care about is the fact that we want as much shielding as possible, plus other benefits. And again, we'll discuss that in the gear section. But just note, the way you're playing, you're going to be constantly proccing your shielding to come back. And if you're missing any health, you're going to be constantly proccing that as well, while also having a quite sizable damage reduction. Basically making the game kind of unfair because you get super regen and super mitigation while also having insane damage. And that's going to bring us to point number 3. I mentioned that in order to build to be the best there is overall, it has to have no glaring weakness. So, for example, you could build a really good melee build in this game. I'm going to be building one. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I know it's not going to be the most powerful build in the game because it has a glaring weakness. No matter how you look at it, when you're fighting flying enemies that you can't attack with melee easily, your DPS is going to plummet for those periods. So when you're dealing with areas that have a lot of flying units, you're going to be quite weak. This disqualifies them from being the best. This build has no such issues. You're going to be able to kill flying targets, no problem. Targets on the ground. You're going to do a ton of damage from ranged. You're not going to necessarily want to be up close, but because you're relatively tanky, if you need to be up close for a little bit, that's okay. You can basically play from almost any range whatsoever, and you can have so much indirect fire. I've quite literally finished maps where I hear the notification that I finished a stage in the chaos mode, and then I'm like, what the heck happened? I go around a corner and I see a bunch of the gems from my pets that I had left around the corner that I just annihilated whole droves of enemies. So you're going to have this passive DPS that's going to be through the roof in addition to whatever you're doing actively with your guns. And then the final criteria, very subjective, is it fun? Yes, it is. It's smooth, it's quick, it's powerful, it's not overly complex, and because it looks so cool as well when you're doing it, I feel like it's just one of those builds that I think a lot of people will enjoy. So this build quite literally has that, well, it's four, I was going to say trifecta, but it's four factors. I know, quattrofecta, I guess. Needless to say, all these elements combined is what makes this so very, very powerful. Hopefully this has made some sense so far. When we look at the gear in just a moment, I think it will all come together. All right, let's talk about gear. And I want to say something here. I want to point out, I don't have perfect gear now. I did not get early access to this game. So unlike a lot of the big content creators who had about, I think I've heard like 2 weeks head start, and a lot of them were able to, max out all their characters and mention about all their characters being Chaos level 20. I didn't have any of that. I started the same way as everybody else did, day one on release. The good news is I've been able to get, just within a couple days, this character maxed out into Chaos 20 without any other advantages. I'm a part-time YouTuber. I have a full-time job. I got 4 kids. I had my wedding anniversary this weekend and a going away party, and yet I still got this. Why am I saying that? I'm not saying that to kind of brag of what I did. I'm saying that if I was able to do this with this class because it was so buttery smooth, so can you. So get hyped about this build if you're not already. It's amazing. So let's talk about gear. I'm actually going to start with the support gear, and then we'll talk about the weapons, okay, after that. So first things first, the 2 items that are the simplest, and I don't even have the best right now. You basically want to get either the best companion damage gear that you can get, or spell power. Both of those are going to be really, really potent. I just happen to have the best drops so far for me have been companion damage. By the time you hit 40, it'll be about a 15% bonus. Once you get the chaotic factor, so those start dropping when you do chaos mode, it's about 17%. But what you care about are these secondary stats. So obviously action skill cooldown rate on here is useless, but we like spell critical hit rate. We like companion critical hit rate. Those are both fine and nice. And on this one, we have companion critical hit chance and spell critical hit chance. Both quite good. So can't go wrong with those. I wish there was spell cooldown on these, but haven't found anything like that. And again, all of my spell power primary stat rings so far had just horrible other stats. They had like melee damage, melee critical hit, etc. So that's why you don't see it here. But just basically keep up with your inventory, whatever is the best, whether it's best stats for companion damage or spell damage, pick that one. Now your shields. Shields are interesting. So you have a couple options. This is my current favorite one that I found, Desperate Mind Rune. Check out the capacity. It's not even a beefed up one from the chaos modes, but over 6,000 capacity. Who cares that it has a 3.4 second recharge delay? You just want that capacity to be as high as possible. Now check out the other factors here. It has a rune effect. So when you cast a spell, and remember you're going to be doing 2 spells every 10 seconds or so. Summon a frost rune under a nearby enemy that explodes a short delay later. This is good for doing some AoE damage, but really it's to slow them. It's going to help with crowd control, keep people's in check. It has a short cooldown. It doesn't say how long, but generally speaking, you're able to get it up all the time. And also, my favorite enchantment so far is this one. When health is below 50%, you regenerate 5% max health per second and gain 30% damage dealt. So remember, when this character gets lower in health, we got the damage reduction from the skill section, and we also got a damage increase. So here we get even more damage increase when we're low health, and we're healing up. In addition to all the automatic or the skill-related healing, you have this additional 5% healing, which is really, really nice as well. The other one that I like on this is going to be every time you cast a spell, you get 15% damage, and that's quite nice. So that's this one right here. It's 10 seconds, 15%. You can overlap them as you want. So that's real nice. This is another shield that I got. Notice the capacity is not nearly as nice. It's 4,180, but it's not bad. And I've been messing around going back and forth on this. This one has a really cool rune. Whenever you kill an enemy, you restore 15% of your max health and deal 20% bonus fire damage for a short period of time. If this had been just damage, I would have taken this no problem. The healing is insane. If you get this, and if you're struggling to stay alive sometimes because maybe you're under geared, throw this on. That 15% healing constantly, especially with your high total health, is going to be a lifesaver. Absolutely love that one. And of course, there's also some generic ones that you can find. Here's just an epic one that I found, level 40. It's got 5,456. That's really nice. As far as enchants go, those two that I mentioned are really good. Also, for most of my chaos farming, I use the enchanted gain 25% loot luck. So once I got to around chaos 16 or 17, things got a little hairier. I never lost, but I had some issues. Things went a little slowly, so I swapped over. Plus, in those high chaos levels modes, you're getting so many legendaries on a regular basis. It's not a big of a deal for the loot luck as much. But do note that this is another viable way. So lots of options for shield. Just again, when you're starting out, just get the highest capacity shield you can and throw it on. Now, let's talk about body armor. And this is the most complicated thing because I need to explain how armor works. So the way armor works is just about any kind of armor can drop, but you're much more likely to get armor that has one or both of your two classes. And so my classes are Graveborn, so I get lots of Graveborn, and then I get lots of Spellweaver. I can get this naturally, but it's quite rare because it requires me to roll Graveborn and then happen to randomly get Spore Warden, and then also get this best in slot combination. I'm sure there's a legendary version that'll be a little bit better, but as far as epic, this is what you're looking for. You want 3 in Thrall and 2 in Hydra. It's amazing. Now, different types of armor, so don't, this is a ghost light fine investment. They will roll with certain modifiers. So for example, if you look at the armor, and I got rid of it, unfortunately. If you were to get the armor that is just Graveborn plus Spell Shot, they primarily buff Essence Drain, they will buff Ascension, and a lot of times you'll see them buff, I believe, which one? It's one of these here. Oh, this one right here, Warcaster. Seems like 70% of the time. Those are the ones they love buffing. And again, I love Essence Drain. Spell cooldown reduction is great. Ascension is great in a pinch, but nothing compares to Faithful Thralls and Dark Hydra. So, how do you get this? Well, it's a little bit of a trickery, but not really. Earlier in the game, when you're leveling up normally, just get a armor that has good, get +3 to Ascension. That 120% consistent spell power is going to get you through the game. Towards the end of the game, you're going to unlock the ability to respec this. Once you get into level 40 chaos farming, and you're trying to start to min-max your build, respec, and change this to the Spore Warden temporarily. And there's lots of different builds you can find online with the Spore Warden, but honestly, you can keep mainly your Grave Warden stuff unadjusted too much, and then just kind of look at what will buff your cooldown reduction, what will buff your pets a little bit, and kind of just pick that. you're going to be probably putting 70-80% here in Graveborn, a minority here. Eventually, I may make a build for the two of them, and other people have built these builds already. But it's basically a temporary fix, because what you're going to do is you're going to want to do the chaos runs. And at the end of the chaos runs, you're going to have the currency, the little gems that you picked up. And you can literally purchase any type of items. Like, it's basically a random lottery. But you can go up to a little icon that basically says spells, or armor, or pistol, or necklace, or ring. And you put 500 of these gems, and for 500 gems, it's going to spew out 3 to 4 items. And they're going to be always for your, well, predominantly for your class, but blue, epics, or even legendaries. And the higher your chaos level is, the more legendaries you get. But you don't really even need, like I said, legendaries. You can just get this epic. And for me, it worked out really well. I was on chaos 6 or 7. I swapped over, did one run, and I found this. Now, I was lucky, but the fact that during that run, I think I got 5 or 6 items that were like this. They just didn't have the best stats. This, again, as far as the skills, is best in slot. Companion damage is amazing. Movement speed is amazing. The only thing that sucks here is that melee damage. That's worthless. But everything else is quite good. So you swap over that. As soon as you get this, it doesn't have to even be this good. Swap back over, you're good to go. Is it a bit of a pain? Sure. But this is best in slot. And it's best in slot for my build. It's best for slot for Graven Spell Shot. It's way more effective because of all the synergies than even with the Spore Warden. So it's good for everybody. It's amazing for my build, and it's what makes my build unique, and what makes one of the things that makes my build unique and synergize so amazingly. So that's what you need to know about the armor. Now, neck piece. For this, the main thing is you want to make sure you have a high Graveborn power. This is very, very important, because this is going to modify everything. Your spell damage, your minion damage, etc. It's quite good. Now, because I've been so powerful so far, this is not even that amazing. I, in all honesty, have kept this because of the loot luck, so I can get better loot. But, for example, I have a better neck piece here. Oops. So I actually really like this. So Dark Magic, Graveborn, and gun reload speed. The gun reload speed will make sense. This will be really, really useful with the primary weapons we're going to use in this build. So this is actually quite good. Also, something like this is really good. Dark Magic efficiency is not bad. Helps with some healing and status effect chance. So you're going to be doing a lot of fire damage, sometimes lightning damage. And because this will help your minions proc these effects, this is useful as well. But again, I'm so powerful that I just like this because it has the right primary stats and also a loot luck. Now, spells. This is the most important thing outside of your weapon. I guess your armor is really important. But the spell gives you quite a few options. So at lower levels, you may not find very many of these summon spells. And they're going to basically fall into 2 categories. One is a literal just summon. So notice this right here is Spitting Devouring Hydra. This is Jacketed 3-Headed Hydras. These are just straight up summons. This will summon one click, it's going to summon 1 Hydra. And with probably the best effect of all of them, as you'll see here, summons a Hydra companion that will spawn another Hydra whenever an enemy damaged by it is killed. So it doesn't have to kill it, it just has to damage it. And then also when you're fighting a boss, it has a chance to spawn another one when it hits them. So that's pretty darn nice. Also, it has very, very solid base damage. You notice mine rolled with plus 82 base damage. It just has pretty much no crit. That's okay. Or rather, not no crit. It has no crit, but it has no status effect. So it's really not going to be freezing, but it's going to hit hard. And also, we got this interesting enchant. I've been trying to test out just how effective this is. It's kind of hard to see the effect, but this should work. So after getting a spell kill, and remember, your spells are your minions. So whenever your summoned minions kill something, you gain a 50% chance to shoot an additional projectile for a moderate duration. This is quite cool. because you have a lot of Hydras, and some of them may have multiple heads and multiple projectiles. So for example, here's the other example that I'm currently testing. This one, it's another fire and forget, but it summons a Hydra companion with additional heads, firing more projectiles. It also has +1 projectiles per cast. So this already has 3 heads, but it actually shoots more. So notice at the damage, it says 259 times 2. This is per head. So even though it says 1 projectile per cast, it's really per head. So this goes from 3 casts times 259 base before any other modifiers to 6. This is huge. Now, I've swapped to these singular casts because just my DPS already is out of hand, and I'm trying to test out if this is more powerful than the alternative. The fact that I got this volatile, and volatile I believe is something that you can only drop at Chaos Mode 20. So this is the first time I got one, and I didn't get it until I actually was clearing Chaos 20. So this is really, really powerful, but you're not going to probably see these early on for whatever reason, or at least not that secondary effect there. But what you're going to see is more basic ones, and ones that I highly recommend. So as I mentioned, the first types of spells are the ones that are direct summon, but there's ones that have indirect summons, like this one, Burgeoning Luring Elemental Blast. This was only level 39, but notice it's a repeating cast. You hold to cast repeatedly, it spawns a Hydra on impact. So this basically fires, if you hold the button out, 3 fireballs. They do damage, and where they land, they summon a Hydra. So this summons 3. Really, really, really good. I used this for a long time. Also, here's an example of, I think, safely probably the best enchant. Again, as I mentioned, the other enchant, I'm not sure how effective it is. It's hard to test it. This one that has a 50% chance to shoot additional projectiles. But this will guarantee every time you cast a spell to get, this is 11, but once you're at level 40, this is actually going to be 50% or 15% damage for 10 seconds. Remember, that's damage, not spell damage. So this is going to impact your minion attacks, your gun fire, if you were to do melee, that's melee. It impacts everything. So that's a nice safe bet to go on there. So that's one of them. And then the other one that's really, really popular is this one right here. And these are these sigils. So what this is you cast it once, and it does this like kind of AoE area around you, and it kind of freezes stuff. It doesn't do that much damage, but what's important is it summons 3 Hydras immediately around you, and they last the whole duration of the AoE, so 6.4 seconds. So this is a way that, for example, the combination I used for a very long time, and I recommend as you level up especially, and it may be what I go to back to soon once I get better versions of these spells, is when you combine that with a fireball spell, that's a total of 6 Hydras. And in addition to that, remember, we can res 5 more every time we kill stuff. So every time we kill something, there's 60% chance we get one of those Hydras with the item that I have, with the armor. That basically goes from 3 to 5. So right there, you can potentially have 11 summons. Don't forget, you have your main companion, which counts as 1. That's 12. And then we'll talk about how to get the other 3 to 4 in just a second, because it's going to have to do with your weapon. So those are your spells. There are 2 other types that I found so far. There's one that's a channeling cast. This is the first time I actually found it at pretty high level. You hold and release it. Notice this summons just 1 Hydra when it lands, but the actual blast does more damage. So the other one was 3 different fireballs, less damage, 3 different pets. This is 1 companion, 1 damage. Again, not as big a fan of this. I'd either want the AoE instant, the 3 of them that are that spawn, or I prefer the other one that has that special effect where it can proc other ones when enemies die. Now, there may very well be other ones, but those are the ones that I've run into so far. and those are likely the ones that you are going to run into. So again, as you level up, as soon as you can, get one of these that spawns multiple of them. If you can get 2 of them, great. Remember, you care about quantity, not quality early on. Once you're min-maxing and you're in high chaos mode dungeons, you can start being picky and testing out how I did. But for now, just get any combination of spells that will get you 6 of them. And again, that's going to help get that crazy synergy of getting those huge damage bonuses. All right, next we're going to talk about your melee weapon. And I'm going to make a separate video on this as well. But you want this weapon. So for a non-melee character, I feel this is the best melee weapon in the game because of the text here. So there's 2 things. The very bottom, it says frying pan. And I'm going to read just the, it says, while melee attacking, gain a 90% chance to reflect incoming bullets. We don't care because we're not going to be meleeing, but you get a 15% chance to reflect incoming bullets while basically it's holstered. That's fine. You'll find that on armor sometimes, but what we care about more is what's above that. It says it reduces bullet and projectile damage from the wearer by 90% while holstered. Basically, by wearing this on your back, you get a 90%, let me see here, there it is, protects you from 90% of all projectiles. That is the most insane mitigation, and it's before any of the other mitigations, just for equipping this. There's nothing that comes close to that buff. Oh, and by the way, I put an enchant on here. When I cast a spell, I increase my gun damage by 30% for 10 seconds. Potentially, you could re-roll this and see if you get lucky and get the one that just increases damage. I haven't been so lucky. Again, be careful. Make sure you don't put anything that says on action skill. I made that mistake. We don't use action skills in this build. It's useless. You can only benefit from on spell cast or, just passive effect. But this again, get the jacked frying pan of the Remorseless. You can easily target. I just got this in chaos mode dungeons. You can farm in the world, but honestly, once you're into chaos mode, I just went ahead and bought a bunch of the melee weapons with the points at the end of the round, and I got this within like 1 or 2 tries because there's not that many melee weapons, overall. So if you're getting a bunch of legendaries, eventually you're bound to get one, but you're not just farming some boss over and over again. You're getting this as well. And I may make a separate video also potentially on where to find this if people care that much. So, or other people I'm sure will make it as well. All right, now let's talk about the most important thing outside of the synergies, and that's the weapon. So you want a very specific type of weapon. I have not found anything better yet. So the best option for you are these. They are basically TDR weapons. They're always, or sorry, not TDR, inferior weapons. These are the type of weapons when you reload them, you are going to have a special effect. And so there are a couple options that have been brought up. A lot of them will be like this right here. When you reload, you throw a weapon and explodes on impact, and it morphs into a multi-headed Hydra companion. This is very common. This is what most people will recommend. That's not what you want. What you want is this beauty. And you want it on a pistol. The reason you want a pistol is the pistol has the fastest reload time at 1.3 seconds. I love SMGs in general, but if you look at them, let me see here. Oh, I thought I had this one right here, sorry. No, just kidding. I thought I had there it is, sorry. So you'll see here, this one has 1.6, and all the other ones are even slower. So you're going to have the fastest baseline refresh. They also do really good damage per hit, which is big because you're basically going to be shooting one bullet and reloading, shooting one bullet and reloading. Because what's going to happen is you're basically going to throw a javelin. It's like a thunderbolt, like, you're like a Roman god, right? Throwing down lightning bolts. It's going to do a shit ton of damage. It appears like it definitely gets modified by your huge damage modifiers. I'm not sure if it would stack with weapon damage or spell damage. Sounds like it would with one of them. I just haven't figured out a way to test it. But needless to say, it's going to hit like a Mack truck. And on top of it, when it lands, it's going to spawn a Hydra. And so, because you're basically going to be every second to second and a half doing this, you're going to go ahead and constantly spawn Hydras. I found that I consistently maintain 4 from this. And that's where you go from, again, 12 to 14, 15, or even 16 companions. And it's very, very reliable. And it does a ton of damage. You're one-shotting badasses. It's ridiculous. So on this one, when I re-rolled it, you'll notice it doesn't say that. It's because it glitched out and it just removed that line, but it's still there. So the primary one I use is fire because it does the most damage. But then I recently got the lightning one. This is the one when obviously dealing with shields. Eventually, I'd love to get one that is also poison, which would help with the armor. And then for the new bone mechanic, where it's kind of like the skeletons, the white kind of bars, that's what the freeze is good for. And I don't have them all yet, but that's kind of the goal here. Now, it's very important to note that when it comes to companions that get summoned that count towards this faithful thrall amount, not all of them count, okay? So I had originally thought that as long as it said companion, you were fine, but that is not correct. Only the Hydras work. So some of these, like this one right here, says throw a weapon, transforms it into a pixie companion and shoots enemies. So you would have thought that this would count. I mean, I did, until I realized, wait, it's not increasing the stack of it. So these pixie companions will benefit from your damage bonus. They will benefit from your companion damage bonus, but it will not count towards a thrall limit. I don't know if that's a bug. If anything, maybe they should count, but they don't, not the other way around. But just note it doesn't count. Also, any of the other ones that will say, you know, when you reload or you do an effect and a bunch of, I don't know if it's like ravens or drakes, it'll say other animals play out, but it does not say the companion keyword. Those don't count either. So only the Hydras count. So again, there are going to be Hydras that when you drop, they're going to be single Hydras. You can also spawn 3-headed Hydras, which is really cool. But again, with the non-Thunderbolt ones, reloading doesn't do anything else. You don't do any significant damage. So you get like 1 bullet off, reload, and then you get the effect. This way, you get the huge Thunderbolt shot, which is going to be a significant part of damage, and you get the Hydra. Very, very critical to get that. And again, the easiest way to get it is simply, you know, you may get one, luckily, if you're leveling up, awesome. If not, don't worry, you'll be fine. You're going to destroy everything without it. But once you get to the Chaos mode, do the same exact strategy I mentioned for the frying pan. At the end of the dungeons, take your gems, go over to the section that has the pistol, and just buy up as many pistols as you can. Inevitably, you're going to get one. I had really poor luck. I found the first one naturally, and I had to re-roll a bunch to get my second one, but it's RNG. So again, that's the secret right there, because now you got all these Hydras doing all this passive damage by themselves. You still have your main companion, and now you have this actual gun damage that is also coming into play. So when it all combines, it's the perfect storm of DPS, as you will see in the video and you saw in the highlight video at the beginning. All right, next, since we are talking about Chaos Dungeons, I do want to kind of point out that when you run these Chaos Dungeons, which is the end game content, there are going to be these kind of randomized setups where you go through a room, you got to kill a bunch of enemies. There'll be like secondary missions. Once you complete one room, you kind of go through teleporter, you go through another one, you basically go through 2 normal rooms, then you fight a mini boss, 2 more rooms, and then you fight a boss for the most part. I think that's the count. Maybe I'm missing 1 or 2. But it's basically kind of like a Diablo 3 dungeon grind. And during that process, you're going to have options every time you finish a room. You may have an option to go and get extra gems or extra items, but one of them will kind of look like this icon right here, and it's a curse icon. And if you select that, then you're going to have an opportunity to pick a curse, and they're either easy, medium, or hard. And so the easy ones, sometimes they'll even be beneficial to you. The medium ones, I don't worry about. The hard ones, for a lot of builds, they're absolutely crippling. Not for us. The majority, pretty much all the way through 20, including my one-shot, I always chose these curses because they'll give you huge amounts of bonus gems at the end of the run, or as you progress, actually. So I believe if you pick a hard one, it increases the amount of these gems you get by 120%. And it's, I think, 60% for the medium and like 30% or so for the easy. So this is huge. Now again, most of them, because of the way that we play, are not going to be dangerous, but I made a short list of the following that are kind of dangerous. So the number one option that I hate going with, I actually may be saying it wrong, but it's basically the tethered curse. It's like, I meant to write it down. It's like tethered something. But what it basically does is this specific tether makes it so that there is a floating little robot, and it makes the enemies connected to immune to all damage. Now, it's simple enough to, all you gotta do is kill the little robot. The problem is it's on this leash, and sometimes it goes behind the monsters. Our Hydras don't tend to prioritize those. So you have to kind of aim down and destroy them, which is kind of a pain in the ass. You kill things so fast, having to pay attention to those little things just slow you down. It's not that you can't deal with it. It's just such a pain in the ass. I never choose that one. That's the first one. The second one is Elemental Overflow. Hate this one. Basically, it will randomly pick an element and make each enemy immune to one of them. It's easy to tell which one because it'll have like this pulsing color. Because for most of my leveling, my main weapon was a fire weapon. Of course, what would happen? Well, I'd have whole half levels where a bunch of them are immune to fire. Would slow things down. I have to put on a ghetto weapon and trudge through it. Absolutely hate it. For this build, I think for most builds, unless you get to a point like I'm trying to get to where you have 4 guns, all godly, all of one different element, then you won't care. But until you get that, avoid that one like a plague. It's just a big pain in the butt. And there are 2 other ones that you can deal with, but they can be crippling for you if your DPS isn't min-maxed yet. First one is called Toothless. It's going to lower your crit damage by 75%. So if you've been stacking crit chance, you're relying on crit damage, that basically will nullify most of it. That can be a real kick in the junk. So normally, I still tend to pick it more often than not, but half the time I kick myself. Once you get really powerful, you're not going to care because your base damage will be so high. But early on, I kind of avoid that one. And then it says it's ouch damned dot. And that one basically lowers your dot damage by 80%. So all of the elemental attacks do some form of elemental damage. Or actually, I don't know if freeze does. I think it actually does a little bit. But like your burn effect is actually a big part of your fire damage. So losing 80% of that can be a kind of a pain in the butt. Now again, you can test it out. You may be steamrolling kind of how I was, where even when I picked it up, it wasn't as big of a deal. But if you're not as geared out, it could quite literally be the difference between winning and failing. So those 2 are annoyances, especially when you're under geared. Everything else, don't worry about it. There's like ones that give these bots that will buff the enemies. Who cares? You're going to kill them super fast. There's ones, if the enemies bunch up, they do more damage. Who cares? You're going to be far enough away. If they bunch up, great. All your attacks like seem to be, they have AoE effects. You're going to blow them up with your javelin. The more the merrier. Get them nice and close. Boom, blow them up. All the other effects, don't worry about them. You're going to want to be, more often than not, I like being kind of like at mid-range, not too far, not too close. But again, you're tanky enough if you get in close. Don't worry about it. Just, don't face tank because, all the particle effects can make it so that you miss some crazy stuff on the ground. You can die on this build. It's just like if you're paying attention, you shouldn't. So those are the recommendations for the chaos elements. And then finally, let's talk about the actual strategy of how to play this. And you're going to see it if you end up watching some of the footage of me playing here in a second. It's a very, very simple rotation. When you start out engaging enemies, you're going to start by casting your 2 spells. And kind of take a look at which one lasts longer and look at their cooldown times. The ones that has the slightly longer cooldown time, cast that one first, let it drop. Second or so later, drop the other one. Do pay attention what kind of cast they are. Some of them, they're just drops, so it doesn't matter. The ones where you just place the Hydras, just make sure you place them where you want them. They can go on walls. You can target them really far away. If you have the one that drops around you, that one obviously you can't really aim. It's just going to drop around you. And if you're using a fireball, then try and either target an enemy or target the ground in front of them. Whatever you don't do, don't overshoot it above, because if you shoot into the abyss, they won't spawn. You don't want to miss the Hydra. So aim kind of at their feet, or if they're really big, you can try and do, center mass or something. But be careful not to like miss with the fireballs, because that could be kind of silly and shitty. So get those 2 off, and they'll be on cooldown for 7 to 10 seconds. Immediately hold left click, and then you'll see 1 bullet go off, and just tap R. Keep holding left click and keep R. Move your cursor towards enemies. You're going to see this shoot animation for 1 bullet. Throw the javelin over and over again. Every time the javelin hits, it's going to get just stuff will start popping like zits, because you're going to get more and more of your companions. As soon as you get about 6 to 9 of them, you're going to be doing so much damage. You're going to see elites popping in 1 or 2 hits. It gets absolutely brutal. Now you'll see in my video, I like to jump around. Part of that is like from my old shooter days, but you don't have to jump around. But a lot of melee enemies will miss you. You may actually avoid a decent amount of damage by jumping around. It's not always viable. Obviously, your side-to-side movement's a little slower. If you're fighting a boss, you need to strafe, go ahead and do that. But jumping around like I do, it also gives you sometimes a better angle on throwing the javelin. You'll get good at headshotting those eventually. But if you don't like doing that, don't worry about it. Just run around and strafe. You'll take a little bit more damage. Probably not the end of the world, but that's a strategy. As soon as those spells go off on cooldown, cast them again, rinse and repeat. Very, very simple. Feels really, really good. Make sure that you upgrade your SDUs, your max capacity for your pistols as soon as you can. That should be a big priority, so you have lots and lots of ammo. All right, guys, so that's basically everything you need to know to make this build happen. If you have any questions, you'll leave them in the comments below. Now, as I promised, right after I finish talking here, you can check out my full, it's basically a full run, but I edited out me running around, picking up random stuff in between the stages to make it a little bit more succinct. But you're going to see, this was my very first time on any character going on Chaos Mode 20, which is the highest difficulty. You saw I had a technical glitch once. I think I did drop into the fight for your soul once or twice. I made a couple of silly mistakes, but I still crushed it. And I don't know how those rankings work, but apparently I was ranked #1 for speed for that particular run, and that was like kind of like the officially timed run. So I'm not saying I wasn't even that great on it. All I'm saying is, even with me being imperfect, absolutely crushed it. One shot the first time I ever did a chaos mode. So if I can do that, so can you. I feel very, very confident about it. So go ahead and enjoy that. Again, if you like this content, make sure to drop a like, subscribe for more videos just like this in the future, and I'll see you guys on the tail end.